to this question number 3. What's the difference between final goods and intermediate goods? Provide a real-world example for each. So final goods, our tutor says, final goods are those which are used for consumption and investment purposes. See what I could do. So final goods are goods that are used for consumption and investment purposes. Just skip over to the definition of intermediate goods. And intermediate goods are middle of the road merchandise that allude to those merchandises which are utilized either for resale or for encouraged creation around the same time. So intermediate goods are basically the opposite of final goods. So, or let's just find the definition of intermediate goods right here. So from this, we know an intermediate good is a product used to produce a final good or a finished product. That's just a simple definition. So based on those two definitions, final goods include goods bought by buyer families as they are implied for conclusive utilization. For example, drain obtained by families. Goods obtained by firms for capital development or speculation, like apparatus acquired by a firm. It must be noticed that last merchandise are neither exchanged nor utilized for further change during this time spent creation. Milk purchased by a household for consumption. So some examples of final goods are milk purchased by a household for consumption and cars purchased as an investment. So that's correct. With milk, you're not really using that milk to produce more. Maybe in the family you might use it to bake or as the complement for your cereal, but that's not, whatever you're making in your household isn't really captured in GDP, so it's not considered a final good. So once you purchase the milk, that's your consumption, and that's your household consumption, and that milk purchase is considered final. So, and the same thing with a car. If you purchase a car, as long as it's a new car and you're not purchasing for someone else and you're not transferring ownership from someone else, as long as you're purchasing a new car, that car is considered a final good, and it affects GDP. So final goods, also another key point that we'll need to add here is final goods affect GDP, whereas intermediate goods do not. And then let's look at intermediate goods. So we know these are products that are used to produce final goods or a finished product. Our tutor defines it as middle of the road merchandise, alludes to those merchandise which are utilized either for resale or for encourage creation around the same time. Intermediate goods include goods acquired for resale, goods utilized by facilitate generation, raw materials purchased by one firm. Raw materials purchased by one firm from another firm for further production is an intermediate good. For example, milk used in a dairy shop. So milk would be basically seen as their cost of production. I mean, it will be one of their items of production. It's not necessarily the final good, but it's used for production. So milk used in a dairy shop for resale, and coal used in the factory for further use. And another example, if going back to this car situation, let's say a car selling company purchased tires for the car that they're producing or they're manufacturing. Those tires would also be considered an intermediate good because, again, they're being used to produce the final good, which is the car. So this is correct.